Captain Aria Holt sat alone in the cockpit of her ship, staring at the swirling, colorful expanse of the uncharted nebula before her. It was beautiful, too beautiful for the life she was now living. The galaxy had grown quiet, too quiet for someone like Aria. Once, she had been at the forefront of humanity's greatest battles, a leader in the fleet, protecting humanity's colonies from alien threats. But now, here she was, far from the action, stuck on a research station, cataloging star systems and nebulae for colonization. The research station, Epsilon 9, was located at the edge of known space, the part of the galaxy humanity had barely begun to explore. In the past, it had been a place of excitement, a jump-off point for new frontiers, but now it was just a dusty outpost. The peaceful silence gnawed at Aria. She missed the thrill of command, the feel of her pulse quickening before battle, the sense of responsibility for the men and women under her command. The years of war with the alien factions had taken their toll, but Aria couldn't shake the feeling that peace had a price she wasn't sure she was willing to pay. Today, like every other day, she was staring at star charts on her monitor, listening to the soft hum of the ship's engines. She was supposed to be scanning the nebula for valuable resources, but her mind was elsewhere. The soft beeping of her console interrupted her thoughts. It was a signal, an old one, buried under the static and the usual background noise of space. Aria's heart skipped a beat as she leaned forward. A distress signal? But it was too old, too faint. She tapped a few buttons, trying to clean the signal. UP.IT was weak, but legible. Mayday. This is Athena. We are under attack. There is something here. It's activating. This is not a weapon. We are sorry. Humanity must not. The signal sputtered, but the message was clear. Athena, a military station humanity had lost contact with decades ago. They had been sent to investigate an unexplored region of space, but the station had disappeared, and no one had heard from them since. A long-forgotten piece of history, now sending out a final cry for help. Aria's pulse quickened. A part of her wanted to ignore it. It could be an old message, a glitch in the system. But something about the urgency in the voice, the desperation of the crew, made her blood run cold. The message wasn't just a call for help, it was a warning. The crew was telling humanity to stay away from something they had discovered. Something terrifying. She tried to get a clearer reading on the signal, but the coordinates it was coming from were far off, deep into uncharted space. A part of her hesitated. If it was a trap, if this was a fool's errand, she could be putting her crew in danger. But another part of her, a part that had longed for purpose, longed for something more than this endless quiet, couldn't ignore it. The artifact, the message had said, a power capable of mass destruction, something that had been activated. And then there was the final line, humanity must never discover this power. We've made a mistake. Aria's thoughts raced. She wasn't a fool. She knew that humanity had enemies who had hidden their most dangerous weapons in the far reaches of space, waiting for the right moment to strike. Could this artifact be one of those weapons? An ancient relic left behind by an enemy faction? The thought sent a chill down her spine. If it was real, it could change everything, could threaten the fragile peace humanity had fought so hard to maintain. She quickly accessed her communication console, sending a message to her superiors. Captain Aria Holt, Epsilon 9. I've intercepted an emergency distress signal from the Athena, a long-lost military station. They've uncovered something, an artifact, and it's activating. They warn that humanity must never discover it. I request permission to investigate further. The response came quickly. Captain Holt, this is nonsense. The Athena was abandoned long ago. The signal could be years old. This is nothing but a false alarm. Aria's fingers tightened around the controls, her frustration mounting. But, sir, no, Captain. The fleet is not going to waste resources on an old distress signal. Continue your mission and report back on your findings. That is all. She knew the conversation was over before it even started. Her superiors weren't interested in anything beyond the quiet, controlled life they were now living. They didn't want to risk upsetting the balance. But Aria couldn't let it go. Not this time. If the Athena had uncovered something dangerous, something that could threaten humanity, it was her responsibility to act. She made a decision. She wouldn't wait for permission. She couldn't. There was something in the signal, something that couldn't be ignored. Arya set the course. She would head to the last known coordinates of the Athena, and she would find out what the crew had discovered. The consequences of ignoring it were too great. Asa, her ship powered up and broke free from the station's orbit. Arya couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she had just set into motion something far bigger than herself. Something that would change everything. Her mission had begun. But she had no idea that by the time she reached the Athena, an even greater, much more dangerous force would be drawn to the same coordinates. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to be shaken awake. Captain Arya Holt stared at the swirling mass of stars outside her ship's window, the coordinates for the Athena growing closer by the second. Every passing moment felt like a countdown to something inevitable, something dangerous. She had no idea what she would find at the ancient military station, but the haunting warning from the Athena's crew played over and over in her mind. Whatever lay ahead, she was determined to stop it. Then came the explosion. The ship rocked violently, throwing Arya forward into the control panel. Alarms blared across the cockpit. She steadied herself and quickly assessed the situation. Enemy ships. A whole fleet. She glanced out the viewport and her blood ran cold. The ships were enormous, hulking things, their metallic surfaces scarred by ages of battle. Their design was brutal, no elegance, just raw power. These weren't just any ships. These were Orcs takers. The Orcs takers were legendary in their cruelty and strength. An ancient species, they were infamous for their domination of the galaxy's most hostile territories. For centuries, they had been feared and revered by all other species as ruthless conquerors. No one understood them fully, except for one thing. The Orcs takers were obsessed with one thing above all power. They conquered worlds, not to own them, but to destroy them, to stamp out anything that might challenge their supremacy. And now, they had found the artifact. Arya's fingers trembled as she activated the communication system, her voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. This is Captain Arya Holt of the Lancer. Identify yourselves. A deep, rumbling voice crackled through the speaker, one laced with authority and malice. Captain Holt, we know why you are here. We are the Orcs takers, and this space now belongs to us. Turn back now, or face extinction. Arya's heart raced. She had heard of the Orcs takers, but seeing them firsthand was a different experience altogether. They didn't threaten with words, they had the power to back it up. But then the voice shifted, a tinge of something else creeping into it. We do not wish to fight you. Not yet. Not over this. There was an unexpected pause before the voice continued, less certain. We need you. Arya's brow furrowed. Need me? For what? You are not the only one seeking the artifact, Captain. We too have been searching for it for centuries. We want it destroyed before it's too late. Arya was caught off guard. The Orcs takers wanted the same thing she did. Her instincts screamed at her to reject any alliance with them. After all, these were the same creatures who had decimated countless civilizations and enslaved entire species. But the words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. They were as terrified of the artifact as she was. Could she trust them? Before she could respond, a new presence made itself known. Another signal appeared on her screen, smaller, but no less dangerous. The Elysians had arrived. The Elysians were a telepathic race, their minds connected to the very fabric of reality. No one fully understood their true motives, but their power was undeniable. They were often seen as neutral, existing outside the common conflicts of the galaxy, but their presence on this mission was anything but neutral. Captain Holt. It was smooth, calm, almost hypnotic. The artifact is not merely a weapon. It is the key to reshaping reality itself. It can alter time, space, and matter as we know it. The Orcs takers cannot be trusted. They seek to destroy it, yes, but their methods will only lead to destruction. What they cannot control, they will annihilate. Arya's mind reeled. The Elysians had always been mysterious, their motives veiled in shadows. but the weight of their words hit her like a ton of bricks. She'd had assumed the Orcs takers were the worst threat now. She wasn't so sure. The Elysians spoke of the artifact, not just as a weapon, but as something far more dangerous, a tool that could rewrite the very nature of existence. But what did the Elysians want with it? If the Orcs takers wished to destroy it, did the Elysians want to control it? Or was there something even more insidious at play? The delicate balance between survival and destruction had just become far more complicated. Arya switched off the communication system, feeling the weight of the choices bearing down on her. She didn't have the luxury of time. The Orcs takers were drawing closer, their ships circling her own like vultures. A confrontation was inevitable, but she couldn't afford to make the wrong decision. Not when the stakes were this high. Her thoughts turned to her crew. Lieutenant Javier Rise, a trusted friend and veteran of many campaigns, approached her quietly. His expression was hard, unreadable, but the concern in his eyes was clear. "Captain," Rise said, his voice low, "I don't trust them. Either the Orcs takers are playing us, or the Elysians are. Or both. Whatever it is, we're stuck in the middle." Arya exhaled sharply. "I know, Rise, but we don't have a choice. We need to work with the Orcs for now." Rise shook his head, the tension between them palpable. "You don't seriously believe we can make a deal with them? They'll stab us in the back the moment it's convenient." "I know. But if they're telling the truth, if they're as afraid of this artifact as we are, then we might not have a choice." She paused, meeting his eyes. "We have to try." Reyes looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he nodded stiffly and turned away. Arya knew he was right to question her judgment. Every part of her screamed to act against the Orcs, to destroy them before they destroyed her. But the artifact was bigger than any of them. The ship shuddered as the Orcs fleet moved in, and Arya knew that time was running out. In the galaxy's most dangerous corner, surrounded by enemies on all sides, she had to broker a peace between ancient rivals before the artifact tore everything apart. As her ship drifted closer to the Athena's coordinates, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Arya didn't know how, or if, they could stop what was coming. But she knew one thing for sure. The choices she made in the next few hours would shape the future of humanity, if they had a future at all. Captain Arya Holt stood in the cold, sterile halls of the Athena, the weight of the decision ahead crushing her chest. The ship's corridors seemed empty, yet they felt heavy with the echoes of history, filled with the voices of the crew that once called it home. After weeks of hunting the artifact, infiltrating this forgotten outpost felt like standing at the precipice of a new and terrifying reality. She'd already seen the warning signs, strange phenomena, the malfunctioning equipment, and the haunting messages left behind by the Athena's crew. But now, in the heart of the station, Arya was about to uncover something far more catastrophic than she could have ever imagined. In the station's central lab, she found the artifact just as the messages had described, a sleek black obelisk pulsing with a strange, unnatural light. The hum of energy in the air was palpable, as though the artifact itself was alive, feeding off the space around it. She moved toward it slowly, every instinct screaming to turn back, but she couldn't. She had to understand. The data logs she uncovered told a different story than what she had been led to believe. The artifact wasn't a weapon, at least, not in the way anyone had thought. It had been created by the Vorteth, an ancient civilization that once ruled vast swaths of the galaxy. The Vorteth had been far more advanced than humanity could even imagine, but their thirst for control led them down a dangerous path. The artifact, it turned out, was their last desperate attempt to manipulate the very fabric of reality, specifically time itself. They had sought to halt the inevitable march of entropy, to reverse the decay of their star systems, to freeze the universe in its place. But in their arrogance, they failed. The artifact's activation triggered a catastrophic event that wiped out their entire star system in a violent, uncontrollable implosion. Arya's breath caught in her throat as she pieced it all together. The artifact wasn't just a tool of destruction. A failed experiment, one that should have been left forgotten in the annals of history. And now it was activating again. The warnings from the Athena's crew made sense now. The artifact wasn't just a weapon. It was a time bomb, a relic of the Vorteth's ambition, and it was poised to collapse everything in its wake. In that moment, everything Aria thought she understood about the galaxy, about the artifact, about humanity's place in the cosmos shattered. The decision that lay ahead was no longer one of conquest or protection. It was one of survival. Aria's fingers hovered over the control panel, her mind racing. She could destroy the artifact, yes, but doing so could ignite a chain reaction that would ripple across space-time itself, destroying everything the artifact had touched. It could tear apart the fabric of reality. If she activated it, however, there was no telling what would happen. The potential to control the universe, to reshape time and space itself, was a dangerous, tempting idea. But if it was activated, it could become a force no one, not even the Orcs takers, could control. Her communicator buzzed to life, breaking through her thoughts. "Aria," came the voice of the Orcs commander, Zethar. His voice was low, unsettling, but now there was something else in it, urgency. "You are not alone in this. You've seen what it can do." The artifact was never a weapon. It was the Vordath's greatest mistake. "We can control it. We can stop the cycle of death and destruction that has plagued us. But we need your help." Aria's mind reeled. The Orcs takers, her ancient enemies, were offering their assistance. She had spent years fighting them, studying their brutality, and now they were asking for her help. But they weren't asking to wield the artifact as a weapon. They were asking to preserve it, to use its power to prevent the galaxy's destruction, to stop the death spiral that had already claimed their people and many others. "We know how to control it, Captain," Zethar continued. "The Vordath failed because they sought to control time itself. We've studied their downfall for centuries. The key isn't to dominate the universe, it's to stabilize it, to stop the collapse. Humanity, the Orcs, and the Elysians, none of us are immune to what's coming. But if we act now, together, we can halt it." Aria stared at the artifact, the words from Exeter reverberating in her mind. Stabilize it? Control time? It sounded impossible, but it also sounded like the only hope they had left. She had never trusted the Orcs, never believed in their ability to act in anyone's best interest. But the desperation in Exeter's voice made her pause. What if this was their only chance to stop the galaxy from unraveling? Then came the other voice, the voice of reason, or what used to be reason. Lieutenant Javier Rise, standing just behind her, had listened in on the transmission. His face was grim, his eyes full of disbelief. "Aria!" His voice was low, laced with concern. "You can't seriously consider this." "The Orcs? They've been the enemy for centuries. How can you trust them now?" Aria turned to him, her heart heavy. She had known Javier for years. He had fought by her side in countless battles. But now, their paths were diverging. His loyalty to humanity was unwavering, while hers had begun to falter. "Javier, they're not the same Orcs we've fought before." "Something's changed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're terrified of the artifact just as much as we are. This isn't just about power, it's about survival. They're offering a way out. But we have to choose. I have to choose." Javier's jaw tightened. "And what if this is just another trick? What if they want to use it to enslave humanity, to rewrite the galaxy to fit their image?" Maybe this is the only way," Aria said, her voice breaking slightly. "Maybe the galaxy won't be human anymore. But we might survive. We might all survive." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. Aria turned back to the artifact. The decision that lay before her wasn't just a choice about survival, it was a choice about the future. If she activated it, the galaxy would change forever. If she destroyed it, everything could collapse. In the quiet tension of the lab, Aria realized the cruel truth: humanity might not be meant to rule the stars. It might not even have the chance. And yet, somehow, they still had a choice. But what that choice would be, she couldn't know yet. The decision was irreversible. Aria stood before the artifact, its energy pulsing violently in rhythm with her heart. There was no turning back now. The Orcs takers, the Elysians, and even her own crew had all tried to influence her choices, But now, as the weight of the galaxy pressed down on her, Arya knew she had no choice but to take matters into her own hands. The artifact, with its unfathomable power, could no longer be allowed to exist in its current form. Destroying it outright, however, would come at a tremendous cost. She had spent days studying the control mechanisms, making calculations, and attempting to figure out a way to nullify its power without destroying everything. In a moment of clarity, Arya conceived of a solution, an unthinkable modification to the activation process. She would trigger a one-time burst of energy that would destroy the artifact and all of its capabilities. But in doing so, she would risk her own life and, potentially, the survival of every sentient being within reach. Her crew stood at a distance, unsure of what to do or say. Lieutenant Javier Rise was the first to speak, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Arya, this isn't a solution. There's no way to guarantee we'll survive this." His words were heavy, drenched in a mixture of fear and loyalty. She turned to him, her gaze steady. "I know, Javier. But if we don't act, everything we fought for, everything humanity has worked for, will be lost anyway. There's no time left." Her voice barely registered as she made the final adjustments to the artifact system, overriding its fail-safes with her own coding. It was risky, reckless even, but it was their only option. She glanced one last time at the faces of her crew, knowing that this decision might be her last. With a deep breath, Arya initiated the sequence. The artifact flared to life, its surface glowing with an intensity so bright it felt as if the very stars themselves were bending toward it. The energy surged outward, enveloping the station and her ship. In that moment, Arya felt her body tremble as the raw power of the artifact coursed through her, burning her from the inside out. Her consciousness flickered in and out like a candle in a storm. Her vision blurred, and the world around her seemed to twist and warp. Then, in an instant, everything went still. Arya's senses reeled. She was no longer in the lab, no longer on the Athena. Instead, she was somewhere else, someone else. Time seemed meaningless. She was floating in a void, surrounded by swirling cosmic energy, glimpses of stars and galaxies flashing before her eyes. It was as if the entire universe was being rewritten before her very perception. She saw what the galaxy would have become if she had chosen differently, if she had activated the artifact to control time and space. In that vision, humanity ruled, but not as it once had. The race that would have emerged was not the same one that had built colonies, fought wars, and dreamed of a brighter future. It was something else entirely, something darker, something that had abandoned all that humanity stood for. Their ambition had consumed them, and in their desire to control everything, they lost their connection to the very essence of what it meant to be human. But the vision didn't end there. As the artifact's energy surged, Arya felt the fabric of reality itself begin to unravel. The shockwave of destruction cascaded outward, far beyond the Athena, beyond the Orcs and the Elysians, beyond all the species of the galaxy. Space and time began to lose their meaning. What followed was not the end of humanity, but the birth of something new. Arya's body seemed to be torn apart by the force, and yet her mind remained conscious, perceiving the shift. The universe was no longer governed by the old laws of physics. Matter and energy twisted together in ways that had once been unimaginable. The lines between species blurred as different forms of life fused together, creating a new, interdependent ecosystem of sentient beings, each now sharing a bond that defied the limits of biology, consciousness, and existence itself. The Orcs takers, the Elysians, and humanity were no longer separate entities. They were now part of a greater whole, a collective existence that transcended individuality. The very nature of life had been altered. No one could rule this new galaxy, not in the way humanity had once aspired to. The concept of dominance, of competition, had been rendered obsolete. Arya's mind struggled to comprehend it all. Her body was burning with the energy of the artifact's destruction, but her thoughts were clear, her consciousness detached. Was this truly the end of humanity as it had once been? Was it a victory, or had they sacrificed their very soul in exchange for survival? In her final moments, Arya's eyes closed. The last thing she saw was the swirling, ever-changing expanse of the new universe. A universe no longer bound by the laws of physics. A universe where no one species was the master. But before her vision faded completely, a thought lingered in her mind, a question that she couldn't quite answer. What did it mean to be truly human now, in a universe where everything was mutable, interconnected, and constantly shifting? Humanity had survived. But at what cost? And as the energy of the artifact finally faded, Arian knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. But whether that change was for the better or the worse was a question that no one could yet answer. Not even Arya herself. The universe was born anew, and humanity, for better or for worse, was no longer the center of it.